You're listening to episode 47 of the Comics Pals. We're a group of comic book journalists and friends who record a podcast together because we don't talk enough about comics in our daily lives.
To the villain responsible for this, whether it's Kingpin or the Longbox Pals or whomever, I speak directly to you. Two pals are MIA. One has a burnt esophagus and two are sick. We will find you and we will exact our revenge. We may be damaged, but we are not down, and we are not out.
And we are not Daddy's little monster.
Thank you. I was wondering if that was going to get addressed.
The fact that we are not Daddy's little monsters.
Never.
But we are damaged.
Indeed. Some more than others. Pete is literally damaged.
I burnt my throat.
You want to go ahead and tell that story real quick?
Yeah, no, I'll tell. This is one of the most embarrassing things that ever happened to me. So I'm cooking the other night. I'm making nice traditional Italian-style meal, making Italian-style chicken cutlets, pan-fried. I got some rice on the stove. I'm making some nice steamed broccoli. And the water's done. I'm going to check like how it is consistency-wise. I get out a spoonful of it. I blow on it, not realizing that it's so gobbed together that will not cool it all the way through. I take a big whole bite of it and don't realize that it's still boiling hot at the center until it's burned all of my throat. So, from about the bottom of my throat all the way down my esophagus is just like burnt and it hurts like hell.
So, you know what, Pete? That's a spicy meatball.
It certainly was.
That's awful. And I pray for your speedy recovery.
Thanks, bud. I only have to do about 4 hours of podcast this weekend, so it should be good.
Yeah, not bad. So, as you can probably tell, we are all in various states of screwed up, but 3 of us at least are here to do this show because we value you guys. And in order to show how you value us, there are many, many ways you can reach out to us and tell us that you wish us well, laugh at Pete, or tell us maybe where Marco is, because I'm not so sure.
Where in the world is Marco San Diego?
He might be swarmed by body pillows.
It's possible. So we are on iTunes. You can reach out to us on there. Leave us that sweet 5-star rating that we crave. It validates us, and we need validation. We are also on SoundCloud and all other various podcast hosting platforms. So you can check us out on there, your podcast hosting platform of choice. We are on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook and all that other social media stuff that you kids do. At the Comics Pals, you can find us on there. We've got a meme going around that's kind of funny. I like it. Pete put it together. You can tell us which pal most resonates with you. Which pal are you? Choose me. I mean, you're probably not like me, but choose me anyways.
They look at the meme and they say, you know what? I also only eat hamburgers. I'm that character from Popeye that only eats hamburgers.
Or Jughead.
That's a misconception. I eat steak. And
I eat other forms of red meat.
Yeah, and I really love chicken. Like, chicken is the best. So, come on, get your meme right.
Because that's what we're looking for in our memes, is accuracy.
I think so. Who was it? What great man was it? George Washington that said that 99% of memes are inaccurate?
Yeah.
I think that's what he said.
Yeah. Just like Ben Franklin once said, you can't believe everything you read on the internet.
George Washington had 99 dicks. Are you really going to listen to him on this one?
I think I read that on the internet once.
So many penises. You cannot take him reliably.
That is insanely random. And then, of course, you can write to us at thecomicspals@gmail.com. Yes, we are still in this part of the show. And last but not least, you can find us on YouTube. You can subscribe to our channel, which we would really appreciate. Those subs really help a lot. like the video if you're watching it on there, and share it with your friends. It's the most important thing you can do to help us out. We've got a lot of content coming, more stuff like the history of the Defenders, so if you checked that out and you enjoyed it, there's some more stuff coming real soon in that vein, so stay tuned.
Also, we've got a brand new show coming out this Monday, so go check it out.
Yeah, why don't you go ahead and tease that? What is that?
Yeah, I mean, you know what? I guess we can just, announce it now, right? Like, if it's coming out this week, it's probably up right now.
Yeah.
No, it would be. So, me and Thompson, who's one of the co-hosts over on our other show, the Video Game Pals, used to have a YouTube channel called Slack and Slash where we did Let's Plays and stuff like that. We missed doing it. We decided we wanted to get back in the Let's Play game. So him and I have a brand new show called Pals Play, where we're going to be doing Let's Plays every single day, Monday through Friday. So you guys can come check them out. They're not super long form or anything like that. More bite-sized content, 12 to 15 minutes an episode. So it's just a little something for you guys to get a taste of the Pals every single day. So please go check that out today and like, share, subscribe. Let us know what you think of it.
We've got a lot of gaming fans out there, and there's no reason not to check that out. If you like gaming and you like our personalities, which, your mileage may vary, definitely check that out.
It's a fun show, even if you don't like video games. Sometimes we talk about other stuff.
Yeah.
Make fun of Sean for not liking pirates.
Man, do I not like
He loves pirates.
God, they're awful.
Listeners, instead of just tweeting at Sean pictures of pirates, how about we take the next initiative here? He's sick after all. This is his Make-A-Wish Foundation wish. Send him costumes of pirates.
Okay,
please.
Number one, I'm not 7, right? So I don't get a Make-A-Wish, okay?
I just die.
I just die and no one cares. Second of all, why the hell would you send me pirate costumes?
Well, we gotta outfit you, don't we?
When I'm dead?
Need something to be buried in.
Gotta be buried in pirate costumes, dude. Layers. You're like an Olgar.
I don't like it.
Oh my god, what the fuck?
I don't like
Donkey.
it, and I don't want to talk about it. So instead, we're going to do a buy or sell. This week we got some Fantastic Four news that I'm excited to talk about. And we've talked about the Fantastic Four quite a bit on this show, especially over the last month or so. So I thought it would be appropriate. So here's the buy or sell. Of the 4 Fantastic Four members, right? Reed Richards, Sue Storm, Johnny Storm, and Ben Grimm, the Thing. Buy or sell on the one member you would like to read stories about forever. You can only get one. You can only read stories about one of these members forever. All the other characters are gone. There are no more stories about them. You can only get one. One character will exist. The rest will be gone forever.
All right, I'll go first. Without putting too much thought into it, I think I'm gonna give it to Ben Grimm, the Thing. He's always been my favorite of the Fantastic Four. I think I like him as a member of other teams as well. I think he has play with a lot of other members of the Marvel Universe and has been enjoyable on several other top tier teams like that. And I have to say I'd miss him going on about Yancey Street if he was just to disappear for forever. So I'm gonna give it to my boy, the Thing.
Okay.
I'm also going to say Ben Grimm. I think in a lot of ways, he was kind of like one of the de facto mascots of Marvel in the 70s and 60s. Him and Spider-Man. And I think there's good reason for that. He has the most personality of the 4, I think, and he's lovable. I was thinking about it. I was like, I like Mr. Fantastic and all. He makes for an interesting character. But like Pete, I'm also going to buy on the Thing.
All right.
I think he's the heart of the team.
Yeah, I'm not terribly surprised by these answers. I expected it.
He's like me on the Comics Pals.
No. He's like Sean. He's the long-suffering heart and backbone of the team.
Suffering is accurate. So my pick is going to be pretty obvious, I would imagine. I'm going to go with Reed Richards.
Of course.
I think that with Reed, you get an endless amount of stories. He's a character that can be played in many different ways. Over the last 10 years, we've seen some various incarnations of the character. You had the Civil War version, so sort of totally emotionless, kind of calculating, not villain, but semi-villain, I guess you could say. Then you've got the ultimate Reed Richards from the Ultimate Universe,
who's straight up evil as
just
fuck.
An evil bastard. And then, of course, there's Family Man Reed, which I guess you wouldn't get if the other Fantastic Four members didn't exist, but he could always start another family. And there's Leader Reed, Genius Reed. There's so many different kinds of stories you can get with Reed Richards. He travels the cosmos and the universe, so I just think that there's endless storytelling potential there. And I'm a big fan of the character, and I hope he comes back soon.
In Superman lore, there's like a council of Supermen from like all different timelines. And that's the thing in Rick and Morty too. There's the Council of Ricks. I feel like that should be a thing with Reed, the Council of Reeds, where it's all the different Reed Richards like in a setting together because they're like the smartest guy in the fucking universe.
I feel like I remember that happening in the Ultimate line or something. I totally feel like I remember that happening. Maybe I'm just thinking about that time that Dr. Doom did that, but I don't know.
It's not. It's if it has happened, it's not terribly surprising. It's kind of a.
Let us know, Matt Murphy, be our stat boy. Well, actually.
So let's do some pals pulls. So for this week, we've got Jack Kirby's Mr. Miracle trade paperback from Phil.
Yeah, before I go into that, I want to mention Tom King's Mr. Miracle #2, which came out this past Wednesday, and that was really good. Sean, did you have a chance to read that?
I haven't yet.
Yeah. It's really good. I like where it's building. I can see how this might be like the DC version of Vision, more so than like his other works. So I'm really interested to see where it goes. And then while we're doing Pals Polls, I just wanted to give a shout out to the last issue of Action Comics where Superman defends undocumented immigrant from a white supremacist.
Yeah.
And it was pretty fucking dope.
We're going to talk about that a little later.
Okay. Just want to give a shout out to that issue.
I thought you were going to spoil the identity of Mr. Oz, which I would
No.
appreciate. Cool. So you read the issue, though?
I did read the issue.
Nice. So are you transitioning into reading weeklies?
No.
No.
So okay, I'm not a Dan Jurgens fan. As a writer, I think he's kind of stuck 30 years ago, and that's true in the latest Action Comics too. Like it feels very like early 90s. But I appreciate what he did and what he was going for. Like, you know, he took a chance and did something that was controversial in today's climate. Why it's controversial, I'll never know.
Why'd you buy the issue, or however you got it?
Because it got a lot of buzz and like actual media.
Gotcha.
Like big news was fucking picking this story up.
Yeah. Big time news.
Phil read it in the newspaper, so he was like, "I better go pick up one of these picture books."
So I read it and I liked it. I enjoyed it. As for the Mr. Miracle trade, it's all 18 issues of Jack Kirby's Mr. Miracle run from I think the late 70s. Like all his Fourth World shit is the standard bearer for those characters. And I think it's the first time all 18 have been collected in one deluxe edition. So it's cool that they're releasing this right now with Tom King's Mr. Miracle. So if you want to read some classic shit, go pick that up.
Very cool. So from Kale, we've got Bitch Planet Triple Feature #4, which, according to Kale, features art from his friend Rossi Gifford. That's pretty cool.
Whoop whoop.
We've got Headlopper #7. And Mobius, Library Art of Edina. I don't know what the hell that is, but Kale does, and he could tell you about it, but he's not here. From Pete, we've got Snot Girl number 7 and Invincible number 140. Any words?
I mean, I've talked about these books a million times over. They're two of my favorite comics. If you haven't read them, I highly recommend them.
So from Marco, who's also not here, we've got Grass Kings number 7. And according to Marco, it has amazing art by Tyler Jenkins and written well and intensely by Matt Kint. And Harrow County number 25. It's one of his favorite comics being published by Cullen Bunn and Tyler Crook. So there's that. And then for me, Generations Miss Marvel and Captain Marvel. I'm a big fan of both of those characters. I really enjoy their interplay. Their relationship is at a very interesting place post Civil War II because they kind of had a falling out. And I think that G. Willow Wilson is the perfect writer to, take those two characters and sort of address the problems that they're having right now. And the Generations books have been fine. Some of them have been really, really good. So I think this will probably be one of those really good ones, and I'm looking forward to it.
Who's working on that book?
Sorry?
I said, who's on that book?
Oh, it's G. Willow Wilson, and then I can't remember the artist. I'll look it up really quickly so that we can get that info. But we are going to jump into the news. It's a relatively big news week. Some very interesting topics. And the artist on on Generations this week is Paolo Villanelli. I'm not familiar with that person's artwork.
Arto Villanelli.
The artist formerly known as Shinsuke Nakamura.
That's right. But to start the news week, unfortunately, I have some really sad news to report, which is that legendary creator Len Wein has passed. I mean, you can't say enough about what this man contributed to comics, and the proof of that, the proof of all the work that he did, how transformative it was, and what a good person he was. The proof of that is in all the people who've come out to celebrate his life and all the great things that they've had to say. I've read stuff from Hugh Jackman, Jeff Johns, Diane Nelson, so many people in the industry that have had a lot to say. In fact, I do want to read a quote from Diane Nelson here, who is the president of DC Entertainment. Len Wein was one of the most welcoming people and legends in comics from the moment I joined DC 8 years ago. He wrote or edited almost every major DC character. There's hardly a facet of DC's world that Len didn't touch. I, DC, and the industry will miss him and his talent very much. Our love and prayers go out to Christine, his family, and fans. So, I mean, he worked on a ton of stuff over at DC. Teen Titans, Swamp Thing. He actually co-created Swamp Thing. He edited Watchmen, which is amazing. So just, he's, I mean, a phenomenal talent who will be sorely missed.
Yeah, he's had his hands on some of the most important creations, that the industry's ever seen.
Yeah. Co-created Wolverine. I mean, it goes on and on,
Right there. I mean, right? Like Swamp Thing and Wolverine, that's pretty great credits.
Yeah. And he was 69 years old. But I mean, and kind of young, unfortunately. That's
yeah.
He probably had a lot more to offer creatively. But
Sure.
when you think about what's important about life, what did he not accomplish? He created.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, forgetting his creative works, he has a family that I'm sure loves him and everything like that. But then when you talk about what he did creatively, he created characters and stories that are going to last far longer than this generation or even the next of humanity. Right? Wolverine is not going anywhere. And his name will always be attached to that character. So I just think that's amazing, and can't ask for more in life, I don't think.
And then if you're Marco, you worship at his altar because he created the almighty Swamp Thing.
Yeah. Speaking of which, as we mentioned at the top, Marco is still not with us this week, but he did write in with some thoughts he wanted to have shared. So I'm just gonna jump right into that. So Marco writes in with a letter titled "Rest in Peace, Len Wein." Hey guys, wanted to give my words and send my love as I won't be on this episode. Len Wein was a great man and even greater talent. He inspired and continues to inspire many people, as we have seen from those who remember him all over the world. Thank you, Len, for your art and for showing us there is more to people than the muck that may cover us. Let us always show our love. And then he has a quote that says, "If tears could come, they would. Wein, House of Secrets number 92. And they do. Thank you, Marco."
There you go. So we'll leave the last word with Marco. On that front, anyways. So, we've talked a lot about Justice League, the upcoming film, and, what level of quality that movie is going to have, and all the negative stuff surrounding it since the start of the summer, really. And here's one more notch in that belt.
Great.
Because we now know that Zack Snyder will do no press for Justice League. None at all.
Okay.
Well, wait, hold on.
Oh no, it gets worse.
Yeah, this is a whole story. That's just the headline, right? So, comicbook.com reached out to Zack Snyder and, obviously his people to find out if they could talk to him about this, and they clarified that he has no immediate plans to do press, and maybe could be involved in the future, but then Discussing Film and Super Bro Movies reached out to Snyder's publicist to learn if Snyder would be speaking with press in promotion of the new movie, and they got the following answer: Zack Snyder will not be doing any press for Justice League, but thank you for asking. Now, a lot of you might be thinking, oh, what's the big deal? Because obviously he left the production after a tragedy in May when his daughter passed. He left the production in May. His daughter passed in March. Why would he go on a press tour for this film? Well, the thing is that he hasn't been just sitting in the house, because he apparently filmed he made a whole short film. And that movie's coming out relatively soon. In fact, a teaser was released for the movie. So Snyder's active. And couple that with the fact that he removed any and all mentions of DC or Justice League from his Twitter account, and it has a lot of people wondering and speculating, is there a real rift between DC, Warner Brothers, and Zack Snyder?
Yeah, I called this from day one when he stepped aside.
You did.
That there was bad blood?
Yeah, how it seems like they're phasing him out.
Definitely seems like they're phasing him out. It's interesting because him making the new film, I don't know that means anything. Obviously it's worth bringing up, but that could be anecdotal just because he's so burnt out that he doesn't want to do a huge big budget blockbuster that's going to take a lot of, time and energy versus making something that's a smaller passion project while he's grieving. I could understand that, and I feel like there is a way you can justify this away, but I feel like the obvious answer seems to be what you're inferring there, Sean, is that it seems like they're kind of done with him, and it seems that they kind of want people to associate this movie more with Joss Whedon than with Zack Snyder right now.
That's the thing. I'm not so sure, because Joss Whedon's not even being given a director's credit on this. He's being given a co-writer's credit, which is very odd. So,
I'm surprised they're not giving him a co-director's credit or something.
Right. So now there's no director who's doing press for this film. And that's really strange for a movie of this caliber. No, there's no director. And
is Joss not going to do press for it?
Well, he's not the director.
Yeah, but I mean, like, he did do direction on it, and they could, like, have him in that role, even if they're not crediting him as such. I don't know if we have that information. But I could see that being their strategy, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't know whether he's doing press for this one. And you could be right. I just think it's a little odd.
No, it's definitely odd.
The way they've handled this whole situation. And listen, to be fair, right? Because I think we should be fair to them. This is a mess that they didn't necessarily create, because Zack rightfully left the project to go be with his family, and anyone on the planet could understand that. However, what's happened since then has been nothing short of odd, and the fact that he apparently wants nothing to do with this movie, I don't understand why.
I don't really think. I think him leaving the project to be with his family was really more of like a cover story. I think it was like a mutual parting between two parties on this front.
I'm not willing to say that, just because I don't want to.
I agree.
I don't want to use a very real thing that happened in his life to say, oh, well, this was just a means of getting around the fact that they would have to announce that he's leaving the project because he just doesn't want to be involved in it.
Well, I don't think it's that necessarily he doesn't want to be involved with it. I'm sure that's true. I think it's also that Warner Brothers doesn't want him to be part of the project. I feel like relationship has been really tense between those two since Man of Steel, and it only got worse from Batman vs. Superman. And why wouldn't it?
You know what, man? You may be right. You very well may be right. And I think that there's probably a story here that we'll never hear.
Yeah, and I think you're probably right about that.
Yeah. Moving right along, let's talk about Nightwing. Because Nightwing is getting a new creative team, the comic book Nightwing. So right now we've got Nightwing, The New Order, which is a special series that's running right now, which kind of sees Nightwing becoming like leading the charge against superheroes.
A revolutionary, basically. Maybe?
Yeah, and it ends up becoming a redemption story. So we've got that, but then alongside that, Sam Humphries is actually taking over the series as writer, that's pretty big news. He's taking over from Tim Seeley, who wrote a run on Nightwing that is very well renowned. Lots and lots of... Go ahead.
Did Grayson too right before that with Tom King?
Right. And then now Humphries and Bernard Chang, who's going to be the artist, they're coming in with their own idea of how to take this character in a new direction. And so what I kind of wanted to talk about is Nightwing has had some really, really good runs lately. Between Tom King, Tim Seeley now, I guess his run is still going on, and then Sam Humphries on the come up. Nightwing is almost like DC's Daredevil in a way over the last 5 years or so.
I really enjoyed Grayson. I haven't read the rebirth reincarnation of Nightwing. Have you read that, Sean? Can you speak to that?
No, I haven't read it. I have not read it, but I've heard a lot of really, really good things about what Tim Seeley has done. And
what's his name? Kyle Higgins. He wrote the New 52 Nightwing. I heard mixed things on that. I heard it was safe. And he's doing the Nightwing, revolutionary book or whatever. I haven't heard anything about that though. I don't know if that's any good.
I've heard it's pretty good. And then before that, we had Nightwing as Batman.
Oh, well, of course.
Which was phenomenal. So, I mean, you look at the stories that they've been able to tell with Nightwing over the last few years, and it's been great. And I'm really wondering, between this and the movie, if Nightwing is poised to become a central figure in DC.
I mean, he's always kind of been a central figure. It's like he's just always a little bit in the shadows, though. Like, he's the original Robin. He was like the only kid superhero on the Super Friends. Whenever they do something with Robin, historically, it's almost always Dick Grayson in media. So this would just push him further into limelight, which would, I mean, there's a lot of Nightwing fans out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
They all love Dick Butt.
I do want to read a quote from Humphries because he's very, very excited about this book. He actually just left Green Lanterns, and he said on Twitter that it was because DC offered him an amazing opportunity that he couldn't turn down. So when this book was announced, he was asked if this was the book that he was referring to, and he said the following: "Yeah, this is the one. Dick Grayson is one of the greatest characters in all of the DCU. He's got heart, humor, legacy, and he kicks ass. That's why the run is called Nightwing the Untouchable." So obviously he's very excited about this, and I am too, because I think Nightwing is a character that we should be watching for over the next couple years, especially with the movie on the way. So look for that if you're a fan of Nightwing.
Sean, were you a fan of the red in place of the blue on Nightwing's costume back in the New 52?
No.
No?
I don't think it was bad necessarily. I've always associated him with that blue, and I think that blue really kind of, I don't know, that's his thing, I guess.
Yeah.
It'd be like, I don't know, it'd be like giving Spider-Man green, you know? Like, I don't know, it's just weird.
You mean like the time they did that?
When did they do that?
When he was working for that tech company and he had like the 3 or 4 different tech suits that he was wearing for a little while. There was the one with like the neon green with the black.
Yes, I recall that costume. Yeah.
Or the Irish Spider-Man.
It was pretty alright. Hero Parker.
So Stan Lee's in the news this week because he's doing a really, really good thing. Florida obviously has been devastated by Hurricane Irma, and Stan Lee is stepping up to help out. First, he appeared at MegaCon Orlando this year, and it was announced that would be his last appearance at a Florida convention. So he was supposed to be done with Florida. That's it. No more. But now that all of this has happened, Stan Lee has actually made a deal to appear at another Florida convention, which is very, very cool of him. So he's going to appear at MegaCon Tampa Bay. And this is the following as a quote from Andrew Moyes, who is the Fan Expo HQ vice president who oversees this event. "Florida is in need of some cheering up, and what better person to do that than the one and only Stan Lee. We are excited to bring Stan to Tampa Bay for the first time and to work with him to support those communities impacted by Hurricane Irma." So $5 from the revenue earned by the sale of the next 2,000 tickets sold for MegaCon Tampa Bay will be donated by the convention to Feeding Florida, which is a relief group. If 2,000 tickets are sold, that amount would be $10,000. So that's awesome. And then
that's great.
He's also going to be doing an auction, which is going to include artwork from his personal collection, fan interactions, and other various items that he has. And so they think that they will get $10,000 from the auction. So if they're correct, that's $20,000 that they will have raised, that Stan Lee will have helped raise for relief for Florida and the victims of Hurricane Irma.
You know what? That's great, and it's a great opportunity, ladies and gentlemen, because here to join us to talk about his hurricane relief is none other than Stan Lee himself. Stan, can you tell us about the cause?
Oh, well, there's not too much I can say that your buddy Sean hasn't covered here real well in that nice news story, but, ultimately, I just think it's important to use my power and my influence for good, and obviously the people down there in Florida are really suffering right now, and anything I can do to help them out is, that's just the least I could do.
Thank you, old man Stan. We appreciate you dropping by and, giving us the inside scoop on what it is you're going to be doing in Florida.
Anytime, pals. I'll see you next time.
Now, speaking of Stan Lee, I thought it would be nice to add this little piece on him. So during his panel at Wizard World in Nashville, Stan Lee talked about the storied feud between him and Steve Ditko. So, it's been over 50 years since Steve Ditko left Amazing Spider-Man, and we finally are hearing from the horse's mouth as to what happened and what caused this rift. So this is what Stan Lee had to say. I had a big argument with Steve Ditko, who was drawing the strip at the time. When we had to reveal the identity of the Green Goblin, I wanted him to turn out to be the father of Harry Osborn, and Steve didn't like that idea. He said, no, I don't think he should be anybody we've seen before. I said, why? He said, well, in real life, the bad guy doesn't always turn out to be someone you've known. And I said, Steve, people have been reading this book for months, for years, waiting to see who the Green Goblin really is. If we make him somebody that they've never seen before, I think they'll be disappointed. But if he turns out to be Harry's father, I think that's an unusual dramatic twist that we can play with in future stories. And Steve said, yeah, well, that's not the way it would be in real life. And I said, in real life, there's nobody called the Green Goblin. And so Steve was never happy about that, but since I was the editor, we did it my way.
Is it any wonder I'm so fucked up? It's like, if Spider-Man's my favorite character, it's like, this is like my parents getting divorced, you know?
Right.
And they publicly talk shit about each other.
Oh my god, that is hilarious, and I think that's a great reason why editors are not the writer on their own book. But
then they can do whatever the fuck they want.
Right, but could you imagine if Green Goblin was not Norman Osborn?
Yeah, like, I gotta say, I'm sorry, like, I know that, like, you know, it's really shitty that, like, they had a falling out and everything, but I gotta side with Stan on this one. Like, yeah, that was the right call.
100%.
Stan, do you appreciate Pete siding with you on this?
God damn it,
Pete, shut up for a second. I'm talking to Stan.
You know, I gotta, you know, Steve's a great guy. He's a great artist. But, you know, we had our disagreements, and, you know, shit happens.
Whoa, Stan, the vulgarity.
Excelsior to you too.
Listen, you don't make it as long as I have in this industry without hearing a couple S-bombs.
All right, old man Stan, thank you. I think that's probably the first time in the history of media that we've heard you curse. So that's an exclusive for us. We appreciate it. Thank you very much. So we've talked about the Fantastic Four quite a bit, as I said earlier, and wondering where Reed and Sue are. And it looks like Marvel's finally going to get on the road to answering that question. Because Marvel 2-in-1, which launches in December, the first storyline that they're going with is called The Fate of the Four. And in that book, we're going to start to learn sort of what happened to Reed and Sue, with Human Torch and the Thing teaming up with various different characters throughout the run of this story to find the rest of the Fantastic Four. So Chip Zdarsky is actually going to be writing this one, and Jim Chung is doing the art. So cool. Newsarama did an interview with Chip, and he had this to say. So he was asked the question: Marvel 2-in-1 is a classic title dating back to the 70s. Its tangible connection to legacy is obvious, but what does it mean to be bringing this title back now, with Marvel focused on celebrating its long history? I think there are a couple of things at play here. One, the title itself is one we haven't seen for a long time, so it's nice that the Legacy Initiative gives us the opportunity to bring it back. But beyond that, it's the fact that we found a home for two of the original and greatest Marvel characters, Ben and Johnny. They've been popping up all over the Marvel Universe, but rarely together. This is them as a team again, and that feels really good. The first arc of the revived Marvel 2-in-1 reunites Johnny Storm and Ben Grimm, and of course it's called The Fate of the Four. Will this story reveal what's next for the Richards family? That's a question from Newsarama, to which Chip responded, it's Ben and Johnny diving headfirst into the mystery of what happened to them. The world presumes that Reed, Sue, and the kids are dead, but Johnny especially can't accept that fact. So we're heading on a road trip to find out what happened. So what do you guys think about that?
I mean, there's a lot to unpack here. I like the idea of them using Marvel Legacy to bring back something like this, even if it's just in name, just because that's kind of like a fun little nod to the history of the company. You know, something like 2-in-1, because you don't really like get books like that anymore. You know, so that's a neat idea in and of itself, especially in related. Excuse me, especially in relation to the Fantastic Four, which is definitely a set of characters that I think we especially seem to definitely associate with, you know, kind of the golden age of Marvel, as it were. But I think that as a story premise could be really interesting. I like the idea of them going on like an intergalactic road trip together or whatever. It kind of like vaguely reminds me of that run of Green Lantern and Green Arrow.
Our traveling heroes.
Yeah, where it's the two of them in Black Canary, right? Like just going across the country. It's like, okay, yeah, like that seems like a good way to get these characters back together and you know, and hopefully, you know, reunite the four.
No, it's exciting. This is what I like to call kale news. This is news kale oriented and catered to kale. Kaled to kale. No.
Oh my god.
This has nothing to do with vegetables, Phil. What are your thoughts on the Fantastic Four?
I'm excited. I hope Marvel brings them back together with a good author and everything. Like when they presumably are put as a full team again. Yeah, it's I don't know if they'll have a full Fantastic Four title though. Everything that Marvel's done of late seems to trend toward not promoting Fox owned characters. So, but in the interim, this is cool. I like it.
Yeah, I do want to include this last little bit because it is kind of important. Newsarama did ask Chip, Doctor Doom will also be part of Marvel 2-in-1 and he has a secret. What's he hiding? To which Chip responded, well, unbeknownst to Ben and Johnny, Doom holds the key to finding the missing heroes. Writing Doom is insanely fun, and my favorite Marvel book right now is Infamous Iron Man, so it's great to be able to play with what Brian Bendis and Alex Maleev have been doing with the character. For those of you who are unfamiliar, right now, Doctor Doom is basically Iron Man. And that's very weird.
That makes sense. They're both villains.
How dare you?
My God, Phil.
So
you're such a hippie.
But he's not a villain right now. And so it's very interesting to see how they're going to sort of play with this and whether or not Doom will go back to his villainous roots or whether we'll see an interaction between Reed, if he does return, and Doctor Doom that we've never seen before, in which both of them are heroes. So we'll see how that plays out, I guess.
I could fuck with that, honestly.
Yeah, that's a different dynamic. The last time we saw them together, they were fighting for the fate of the universe. So to see them on the same side with Reed's return would be fascinating. So we'll see what happens and how this book reveals the secrets of what's going to happen with the Fantastic Four when it drops in December. So I'm hyped. Now, let's get into something that everybody's been talking about this week. So, we know that the new Hellboy movie is coming out, and we know that David Harbour is playing the titular character, but now we finally have a look at the new Hellboy, and he looks exactly like the old Hellboy.
Sure does, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Hell yeah. I think he looks phenomenal, actually. I think that he looks about as good as Hellboy can look with a human person playing him.
No, he looks
and not
fantastic.
Yeah, this is great stuff.
I'm excited for this.
Yeah. I'm not a Hellboy fan. I've read some Hellboy stuff, and what I read was great, but I've not like really seeked out the character much.
Yeah, it's weird because like I saw the movie when it was like new when I was a kid, and it was always a thing of like, I feel like I'd probably like these books if I read them, and I just never gave them a shot.
They're really good. I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, and this kind of inspires me to go back and read more stuff of Hellboy. But we've got the side by side here of the two actors, Ron Perlman and David Harbour, and they look basically the same, but I gotta tell you, I think that David Harbour looks way better.
Yeah, I mean, he looks good. I don't want to take away from Ron Perlman. I mean, Ron Perlman looked like a really good Hellboy. For a lot of...
Especially for the time.
Yeah.
For a lot of people, he's like the benchmark here for Hellboy. So, I'm curious what what's his name? The guy from Stranger Things that's playing him.
David Harbour.
David Harbour.
Yeah. Really excited to see what he can do.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty insane how alike they look.
Yeah.
You know, like in this side by side, it's like, wow. Like, I mean, I don't know. When you think about how good Ron Perlman looked in the original, like, and how long ago that was, you know, I have to imagine that this is going to be pretty impressive looking.
The unfortunate thing is the makeup isn't good enough to be featured on the ABC show The Inhumans, which is top of the line for makeup and design.
But is it good enough to win an Oscar like Suicide Squad did?
See, I don't think so. He's not wearing a shirt that says Daddy's Little Monster, which is what won the Academy Award over.
Oh my god.
Oh, was it an Academy Award? Sorry.
It won, the Suicide Squad is an Academy Award-winning film for Best Makeup and Design.
I get my irrelevant award shows confused. Sorry, my bad.
You're just upset that Avengers 2, your favorite movie, didn't win an Academy Award like Suicide Squad did.
Avengers 2 isn't my favorite movie, so I'm not sure why you would say that. However, it definitely deserved all the awards over Suicide Squad. So we reported a couple weeks ago now, I think, on the Hellboy situation regarding the character Major Ben Daimio and how actor Ed Skrein had stepped down from playing the character because of whitewashing and because he wanted and felt that an Asian actor should portray the character who is Asian in the comics. And so since he stepped down, actor Daniel Dae Kim actually is going to play the character. And
fancy that!
Yeah, that is fantastic. That's great news. I think that's exactly what Ed wanted. And that's exactly what fans wanted. And now we're getting that. First of all, I love this actor, Lost. He was great on Lost, phenomenal on Lost. And now he's making the transition into film. And that's great. This is what we're talking about, you know? This is what we want. So kudos to Lionsgate for doing this, although it shouldn't have taken an actor doing something that, quite frankly, is outside of his responsibility as an actor to do. It shouldn't have taken that for us to get this casting. But hey.
No, but you know what? Like, I honestly, like, we already patted him on the back, but I think we should take another opportunity to applaud him for, like, having the, you know, scruples to do the right thing, you know, to like be able to use, you know, his position as the person had been given the role to say, like, this isn't right and I'm stepping down because, you know, I feel like it's the right thing to do. And, like, good for him. Like, he made a difference, you know?
Yeah. Ultimately, I agree with that. Whether or not it was his job is...
It wasn't his responsibility to do it.
Right.
But he did the right thing.
Yeah. But despite the fact that it wasn't his job, he saw an opportunity and he took it. And this is something that you can applaud. And for every... Look, there are a lot of actors who wouldn't do this. And
I'm like, honestly, like... I've defended actors who've been criticized for this before because it's like also like they're like I don't think that it's the right thing to take that role necessarily, but like I also don't think it's right to lambaste them for taking a job when that's their job, you know. And it's like I feel like him doing this, right, like he made a really powerful statement and he made a direct impact on his industry, and like he lost money because of it, you know. And like we talked about that, like it's not just the paycheck, it's the if this is a franchise and they have action figures made in his likeness, or like they make another comic based on the movie or something, like that this is like money for a long time that he walked away from because he wanted to do the right thing instead, and that's really great.
Would you like to see more actors do this?
Yeah, I would. Because we see it makes a real difference. It's the one thing that can make a difference, right? Is like, this wouldn't have happened otherwise, right? Like, and, you know, the producers apologized or whatever. Like, I don't know who made this decision to cast an Asian character as a white guy, but, you know, obviously that decision had been made, and it wouldn't have gone the other way had Ed not made a public statement about it and stepped down, you know? And I think if more actors did this, it would put more of the people with the actual power to make these decisions in the hot seat of like, well, why the fuck aren't you doing this? You know, if this actor's willing to turn down a job and, you know, financial security to make this statement, like, and then you're going to recast another white person, like, that's not going to happen. Yeah, that's a PR nightmare. So, like, the more actors that do this, the less this will become a problem. You know, because people will be like, you know what? Let's just avoid this whole scandal and just fucking cast someone who's of color, you know?
Phil?
Please no, Steppy.
So, now we're going to talk about, unfortunately, something that we talk about far too often on this show, which is that the comic book community is often very shitty. And this week, we have two instances of the comic book fan base being crappy, and I should say, what I believe is a minority of fans who believe that Superman and G.I. Joe should continue to be standard bearers of oppression. So, both of these books, both of these character groups, I think it's fair to say are born out of social and political turmoil. Superman, of course, being created by Jewish people who sort of wanted Superman to represent everybody, right? Who wanted Superman to be the champion of everyone. And, of course, G.I. Joe, I mean, they're American soldiers, come on, right?
They're the real American heroes, Sean.
Exactly.
They sell toys.
But some fans believe that these characters should stay out of such politically charged discourse. So we're going to talk about those situations, and we're going to explain why Superman and G.I. Joe and similar characters will always fight on the side of the oppressed, and why that's a good thing. So let's start with Superman, because in the most recent issue of Action Comics, there's a situation that comes up, and basically Mr. Oz is the villain of this arc of Superman, and obviously his identity has been revealed. We're not going to talk about that. We're just going to talk about the fact that his sort of worldview is that Superman is too good for the world.
We're not going to talk about it because Sean hasn't read it yet.
We're not going to talk about it because it's a massive spoiler, and this book just came out this week, and I think that we should avoid talking about what actually happens and who he actually is. If I felt the need to talk about it on this episode, I would have just spoiled it myself.
It's Lex Luthor.
Maybe it is. It could be. I don't know.
It's not.
Good.
So Lex Luthor is not a white supremacist. Good to know.
Right.
Just bald.
So Mr. Oz is inflaming the prejudices, and he's kind of trying to bring out the worst in people to show Superman what humanity is really like. And so what ends up happening is that a recently laid off factory worker blames undocumented immigrants for stealing his job. So he buys a gun, he goes back to the factory where he got fired, and he's looking to kill this factory worker who, in the book, it's not even said that he's an undocumented immigrant. That's not even a part of it. It's just he happens to look like what this person, or what, you know, unfortunately what a lot of people would say is an undocumented immigrant. And so this guy just comes to reap revenge. Phil, you look like you want to add to it.
Yeah, no, I read the issue. It heavily implies they're illegal immigrants because he says you come here, you work for less money and all this stuff. The narrative implies that they're illegal immigrants.
Well, that guy
is
implying that.
The guy
but there's nothing outside of his opinion that says that he's
right.
But since you did read it, why don't you talk about your thoughts on the issue itself, and we can talk about why this is such a controversial thing right after.
I mean, the issue itself is fine. I mentioned it on the top of the episode, but it reads like an early '90s issue. It's a little hyperbolic because Mr. Oz is trying. He accentuates the worst qualities in humanity. What's controversial for really the Fox News readers of the book, I guess, is that a disgruntled, laid-off guy. He's portrayed as being somewhat sympathetic, right? Because he lost his job and everything. He takes it out on illegal immigrants or immigrants. However, I mean, the way it's portrayed implies illegal immigrants, at least from his perspective. But Superman stands in front of the bullets, and he's like, "Why?" To which he replies, "I lost my job. These people are bad, etc., etc., etc." And Superman's like, "There's a blackness in your soul that's your fault, not anyone else's." That's basically what he says.
That's intense.
And
so,
it's fucking awesome.
Go ahead.
I love when Superman does this type of shit. It is extremely my shit. And the cover of the book is the iconic S emblem, and underneath it says hope.
I love
well,
that.
I think it's just ironic to me that that there are people that are speaking out against this and being like, "Oh, Superman shouldn't do that." And it's like, really? Because that's the kind of shit he did in the OG books. He's beating up wife beaters and shitty bankers and just anyone who's just a jerk and picking on somebody who was to Sean's point, oppressed or disenfranchised or not able to fight back.
Right, and you would think that that's common knowledge. But Fox News host and columnist Todd Starnes didn't like that. And so he wrote an article on FoxNews.com basically taking DC Comics to task for, quote-unquote, turning its stable of iconic heroes into pawns.
What a fucking
that's
dipshit.
Interesting. That's a very interesting thing to say, because anyone who's ever read a comic book, pretty much, especially a comic book from the big two, knows that this is the kind of thing that they do. Why? Because they're heroes. I've read plenty of stories where similar things take place. What are the X-Men, right? What have you ever read a Superman comic before?
Sean,
Todd, I'm very curious.
Sean, can I borrow your soapbox for a second? Because I need to get on leash.
Go for it.
So, the reason why these Fox pundits and people like Milo and all these other dipshits are upset is because Superman is supposed to be emblematic of American values. And so you have this character come along, and he says it's fucked up and wrong to murder and oppress people at all. It's any person ever. They look at Superman and they put the American way, American in quotes, before the truth and justice, when it's supposed to be truth, justice, and the American way being emblematic of all American values, which is supposed to be freedom of all people. And it triggers the shit out of these right-wing fuckers that this inherently socialist superhero basically is standing up to them and saying, you're wrong, and what you're doing is harmful. And I'm glad DC is publishing a book like this right now. They did it 2 years ago when Superman basically was emblematically standing up for Black Lives Matter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that was fucking awesome. And this is in the core of the character. He's a working class hero.
Absolutely. And I do want to read some more from Todd's article on FoxNews.com because it's amazing. Instead of rounding up the illegals and flying them back to where they came from, the Man of Steel snatches the white guy with a menacing look snarls, "The only person responsible for the blackness smothering your soul is you," which is what Phil said earlier. Remember when Superman stood for truth, justice, and the American way? Then again, Clark Kent is technically an illegal alien, a native of Krypton. I reckon it's only a matter of time before DC Comics unleashes other superheroes in its corporate quest to defend the alien invaders. So don't be surprised to see the Flash rushing Mexicans across the border, or Wonder Woman using her lasso to round up Texas ranchers trying to defend their property. It's unfortunate that DC Comics...
God, what a joke.
It's unfortunate that DC Comics is turning its stable of iconic heroes into political pawns, hell-bent on indoctrinating our kids.
You're a political pawn, you fucking chode.
He's just being hyperbolic. He's being the most extreme version of it. Like...
That's such a ridiculous false equivalency too. Don't be surprised to see the Flash rushing Mexicans across the border is so the same thing as Superman defending a guy that we don't even know is an undocumented worker from being shot by a disgruntled white man.
Not even just that.
Totally the same thing.
Saving a person from being shot by a racist person.
Yeah.
No, even just saving a person from being shot. Like, that's what superheroes do. It does, like, oh my god. Oh my god.
The thing that stands out here, and this feels like this is probably going to be the prevailing narrative from the right, is Superman himself's an undocumented alien. Why do we let him here?
He is, and that has actually been tried. They've tried to change that. There are comics in which it's said that Superman, when he came to Earth in that the ship or whatever, that it was actually a birthing matrix, and that Superman was born on Earth and born in America. That's actually in comics. Now that's not canon anymore, but at some point it was, and it's unbelievable to me that you would take Superman's origin and try to make it something more palatable to American audience who can't understand or accept that a character like this might stand for people who don't necessarily look like them.
Yeah, he's the ultimate fucking immigrant.
Yeah. And it's crazy.
Again, that Superman would only care about protecting people who are Americans? Like, that's not his bag, man. He protects life. Like, all living creatures are kind of like something he's trying to defend anyone who's innocent, right? Or anyone who's, like... even non-innocent people.
I always like when Superman is in the public eye because it's always over something that pisses off the right. About 4 years ago, when Superman announced his American citizenship under, I think, Straczynski's run, that pissed people off. But the reason why he did that is like, well, people look at me as an American symbol, and I can't impact change on a global scale as much because they see an American coming to invade. I'd rather be a citizen of the whole planet so I can help everyone. That's a totally, reasonable reason to renounce your citizenship because it gives them more unilateral movement to be able to help people. But of course, the right's like, they're trying to take away America from Superman.
Right, and the argument is that, so America's not good enough for Superman and all that. When it's very clear, if you actually read the book, that he's doing it so that America doesn't come under scrutiny when Superman takes action like he did in that book, where he went to save people who were under attack by another government.
That's right.
That's what happened.
Yeah.
So it's really sad also that this guy uses children, right? He says that they're trying to indoctrinate kids. First of all, comic books, most of the time, not read by kids. Number one. Number two, even if they were, seeing a character save someone's life from being, shot, I don't see how is that hurting kids?
It makes them look at illegal immigrants as people, Sean.
Yeah. And again,
they're being indoctrinated.
And again, that's a false narrative. The person that this guy was trying to shoot wasn't even necessarily an undocumented immigrant. That's an assumption that this writer is making. And
it doesn't matter if even if he is undocumented. Superman is saving another person from being the source of a hate crime.
Yeah. And it's just really
that's the best part of it, right? Like that's definitely a hate crime. Like, it doesn't matter if you're not an American citizen, you don't deserve or have the legal right to fucking attack that person or like gun them fucking down. It's like, and the fact that you would argue that this is somehow like, I don't know, making some kind of like, yeah, it's obviously a political statement, but the fact that it's like, oh, like it's demonizing like blue collar white America, and like it's like just get the fuck over yourself, man.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's sad that this guy's obviously not a fan of comics, right? He's not a regular reader of books. But
he's
probably
never read a comic.
Right. But what bothers me is that there are fans of comics, and there are Superman fans who have this similar stance. And we've talked about this many times, and we're going to talk about it again in a few moments with G.I. Joe, but it's unbelievable that you could be a fan of Superman, having read his books over the course of many years, and take this position when Superman himself does not agree with you, and would never agree with you.
Yeah.
Because he's never been about what you're about.
Yeah. I mean, yep. 100%.
Well, yeah, it's ridiculous. You know, it floors me, though, to your point, right? That there are people that don't see the dissonance there, that don't see how crazy it is for you to have that opinion and also claim that you're a true Superman fan, right? That this is somehow a bastardization of the character, right? Or that this is like out of character for him to act this way.
I mean, this is the reality: is if you support white supremacy, which basically you would have to be like, if you're upset about this, it's because you are sympathetic to white supremacy in some form, because that's essentially what the metaphorical language of the book is saying. That's the resonance here. Then you're a total dipshit anyway.
I believe that to be true, because this is the kind of thing that only happens in situations where you're talking about a minority or a person of color. Point blank. You're only ever going to see this kind of resistance, this kind of illogical resistance, this kind of nonsensical platform being taken when you're talking about a minority. The problem in this story is that people wanted to see this minority figure die.
Yeah.
Superman should have stood aside and let this guy get murdered. That's what would have pleased the people who are angry here.
Or like he said, pick him up and fly him back to where he came from,
right,
so then the white guy can get his job back.
Or,
right,
alternatively, some of the critics are saying, this shouldn't be in a Superman story at all. Don't politicize my Superman books. Don't politicize my comics. It's like, alright, well, go back to reading your fucking wartime World War II Superman comics, I guess.
Right.
No, because like even that shit, it's like that's such a ludicrous statement to say, don't politicize my comics. Comics have always been political.
Even the 40s.
Like even we made the point earlier, right, of how a bunch of early Superman comics take very anti big business, there's a lot of fucking like quote unquote kind of radical ideas in those early books. And like fucking the first cover of Captain America, right, where it's like making a statement about those anti-Hitler before we entered the fucking war, when there were still people who were sympathetic to Nazi Germany in America, and they were like a significant number of the population, to the point where they were getting fucking death threats. It's like, this has always been a part of comics. Comics have always been political. They've always talked about race and, gender and all this kind of stuff, and not always the right way, but it's always been in the DNA of the medium. And for you to say, keep that out of my comics, you obviously don't know shit about comics.
Yeah, absolutely. So now
read a fucking book.
I want to jump over to the G.I. Joe issue, because this one's kind of a winding road, and there's a lot of moving parts. So just hang out with me on this one, because we're gonna have to talk about this for a while. So September 11th, obviously, was last Monday, and Aubrey Sitterson, who is the writer of G.I. Joe, and writes, I believe he writes a few other Hasbro comics for IDW, had these tweets. He posted these tweets on the day of September 11th. Oh, good. It's self-centered national tragedy remembrance from people who weren't even anywhere near New York City Day. Unless you were there or lost someone, this is what your social media remembrances look like. And then he posts a tweet of someone else, from someone else, I should say, that is actually no longer available. But if you want to see the tweet, you can click on the link that we're providing in Aubrey Sitterson's tweet. You click that, and then you scroll down, and you can see what the actual post was, and it's actually hilarious. It's the Marriott Hotel posted some sort of like on a table, and then there's a plaque that says, "In remembrance of those we lost on 9/11, the hotel will provide complimentary coffee and mini muffins from 8:45 to 9:15 a.m." So that was the way that they remembered 9/11, and obviously they caught so much flack for that they're not going to be doing that anymore. And so Aubrey Sitterson is basically saying that if you weren't in New York and you hate New Yorkers, which a lot of people across the country do, that's pretty common, and you don't like New York, you look foolish for coming out so hard in remembrance, quote unquote, of 9/11. Now, I don't necessarily agree with his point.
There's such a logic jump here. So there's one thing to be really critical of the branding of 9/11, because that's people like monetizing like a tragedy, and that's fucked up. And
Sure.
A lot of people, including the government, have totally branded 9/11, which is fucked. But on the other hand, the reason why the branding of that has been so successful is because so many people were legitimately upset by a fucking massive foreign terrorist attack. And you don't need to be from New York to be upset by a massive tragedy.
No, and so I really think this is a pretty complex issue, because I want to like preface what I'm about to say by saying I don't think that what Aubrey said was I don't think he expressed himself in a way that was eloquent. You know, I think he comes off here looking poorly, but I get where he's coming from, because I think like there was later tweets he put out that I think tried to qualify his statements, where he was saying like, look, he made the point of saying that it was like the people who make those like grandiose statements about how affected they were, even though they didn't lose anyone personally, or they weren't in the city, or they don't know anyone who was actually personally affected by it. And like, I'm not saying that means that you have no right to feel some kind of way on the anniversary of 9/11, but I can also understand why someone who is from the city or was personally affected by the tragedy gets upset by people who are kind of commercializing their grief so that they can either, in the case of this thing, fucking, you know, have a promotion or, you know, get some faux sympathy on social media. Like, I think what he said is far better explained in his qualifying statements, and I still don't agree with his actions, but I understand why, as someone who was emotionally affected by that day, that kind of action would really make you upset.
Right. And to your point about his follow-up tweets, on the next day, September 12th, he said, "I'm catching flack for this, but as a guy who stood in the streets of Lower Manhattan where he lived and watched it all unfold, fuck you." That's what he said. And I get it. It is what it is. That's his opinion. He's entitled to it. Whatever. I think that the reaction to this, as you're about to find out as we go through this story, has had a lot more to do with him as a writer on G.I. Joe than his actual opinion about 9/11 and people trying to curry sympathy for an event that they didn't live through. So, the very next thing that happened was that Terry Dizzard, who is who runs a G.I. Joe fan site, the most popular G.I. Joe fan site called yojo.com, posted the following. "Effective immediately, we are cutting all coverage of IDW publishing products until Aubrey Sitterson is removed from all Hasbro brand products."
Holy shit.
Right. Now, they say that it's because of this incident, this 9/11 tweet. However, that's not the case, because this isn't an isolated incident. So, Bleeding Cool has actually done, they put together a really great timeline article about this situation. And so they actually interviewed they actually interviewed Terry, who is the runner of the fan site, and he said the following. On several occasions between February and June of this year, Aubrey joined and would attempt to market his book to a private Facebook group for G.I. Joe. Many longtime fans from the community, as well as past Hasbro people, were in said group, with a member count into the thousands. Feedback towards Aubrey's work was often mixed, and any negative feedback resulted in Aubrey lashing out. I'm gonna skip around here a little bit because there's a lot to this. Previously, the G.I. Joe community had an issue with the G.I. Joe Collectors Club and the design of a third-tier but beloved character named Salvo. A large muscular character with a big missile launcher, the club's design was more of an average person's build. This is relevant because not long after this event, Aubrey changed everything about the character when Salvo debuted in issue number 3. Instead, the character was a large woman of color. Considering that the community had just gone through an episode with this character's design, most in G.I. Joe community felt that Aubrey's changes were less story-driven and more of a way to elicit a reaction from the core fans. So, the rest of what's said on that subject is basically just more of that same thing. But the implication is that Aubrey did this on purpose, and then when people reacted, not wanting the character to change from his original appearance of being a white, massively built man, Aubrey called them bigots. And they obviously didn't like that response. This hit a peak in June, when a cover variant had some subtle support for Pride Month. For those of you who aren't familiar with the cover, it's basically characters from G.I. Joe wearing not a lot of clothing, or clothing that isn't necessarily in line with what they would typically wear, and they're kind of grasping each other in ways that are that have homoerotic implications, I guess you could say. And then you can check it out for yourself. Feedback was negative, not because of the subject matter, but the consensus was that the art just wasn't that good. Aubrey took great offense and began calling members homophobic or other such slurs, regardless of how clearly users would articulate their opinions that it was about the technicalities of the art and not of the pro-LGBTQAAIP subtext. That didn't matter. Aubrey took screenshots out of context of long discussion. There's a lot. This article is very lengthy, and it's very well put together. You can see screenshots from conversations between Aubrey and members of the community in which they are very clearly angry with him for how he has changed the characters in the G.I. Joe stories. In the G.I. Joe stories, he has made some of the characters black, as we just talked about. He's made them gay. He's made various changes, sweeping changes. And this has pissed off a lot of the audience for the G.I. Joe comics. Then there were YouTube videos made by people who were upset with what he has done. Videos made by people who have repeatedly targeted minorities and women and LGBT members. And basically we're just trying to get IDW to respond. Okay? So now we get to IDW's response to everything that's happened. Now, mind you, their response is not to everything that I just said. Their response on paper is to his 9/11 tweet. It has come to our attention that a freelance comic book writer whose work includes IDW titles has expressed opinions on his personal social media account that many find insensitive, divisive, and inflammatory. IDW in no way condones or supports these personal opinions whatsoever and recognizes the pain they may cause our readers. Discussions regarding next steps are underway. We appreciate the patience and understanding of our many fans while these concerns are being addressed. Thank you. Now, I'm going to stop talking, and I want you guys to respond to all of that I just said.
Wow. So, a lot to unpack here, but I haven't looked at the entirety of this Bleeding Cool article, right? So I don't know how much blame lies on Aubrey on this, like how unreasonable he was being. Like, can you speak to that? Like,
yeah.
Does it seem he was really like picking fights with people and stuff?
So if you look at the screens, look, he's a writer who's trying to promote his book on the fan sites where these are the people who read it. And everything that he posted, they would have problems with because they don't like that he's taking the G.I. Joe series and writing it so that it can appeal to people who aren't necessarily right-wing conservative veterans who want to read about white soldiers blowing people up. And they took issue with that. They would delete his posts. They were very negative towards him. And if you look at the screenshots, it's often just him defending himself and saying, listen, no, if you guys have a problem with the fact that I'm introducing characters who will appeal to more wider audiences, and you don't want minority characters in your books, then you're bigots. Okay. And of course, they would come out and attack him for saying that.
Sure. Okay, I just wanted to clarify that, because based on, like, the way that you were reading it, I couldn't tell. Like, it definitely sounded like he didn't do anything, but when you were like, oh, like, he was saying no matter how, you know, their arguments or reasoned about the art, and he was still calling them bigots or whatever, so I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, that was coming from the host of that fan site. That's what he was saying. Those were his words. That
was his words. Okay, yeah. That makes sense. Okay. Yeah, because my entire impression of this is, like, especially from Terry's original statements where he's like, oh, he intentionally changed this stuff to piss off the core community. It's like, anytime I hear anybody say stuff like that, it really makes me laugh. Because it's just like, do you really think that, like, he's that in tune with the core G.I. Joe community? Like, your, like, fan site has that much fucking influence? And, like, it's just, like, it's so self-righteous and self-important, self-grandizing. Like, if you don't like the book, fine. But, like, if your reason is that you're mad because you don't want minority characters, or you don't want gay people, or you don't want these other things, and you're gonna cry POC and social justice warrior and all that shit, like, yeah, no, you're probably just a fucking asshole. You know, and, like, grow up. Like, characters change when there are new writers and new interpretations. Like, things like this happen all the fucking time.
Now, I want to add, and this is again from Bleeding Cool, who they get a lot of flack, but they've done a great job here. They pointed out that Diversity in Comics YouTube page is basically a troll page that attacks comic book creators who are in any way embroiled in any kind of controversy, who might be labeled social justice warriors. So this is the list of people that they have attacked: Magdalene Visaggio, G. Willow Wilson, Gail Simone, Kurt Busiek, Tom King, Mark Wade, Brian Bendis, Nick Spencer, Kieran Gillen, Ta-Nehisi Coates. So they do this. This is what they do.
The fuck did Tom King do?
I don't even know.
Oh, Sheriff of Babylon portrays brown people in a positive light. Fuck him! Like, yeah, what the fuck? I guess, right? I'm literally thinking. I've read all his fucking comics. Like, what does he have that's like an SJW book? People don't like him because he's a soldier? Like, that's anti-war? Like,
I really don't know.
Okay.
And so I've looked around, and I can't find another response from IDW. And again, this is an unfolding story.
Let me see if I can find the thing I read.
Yeah, go for it, and I'll keep yapping here. A lot of comic book professionals have come out in defense of Aubrey. A ton of them have come out in defense of Aubrey. And I'll just read a couple of tweets. If IDW sides with the vocal minority on this issue, they side with racists, white supremacists, misogynists, hate-mongering cowards. That's just one. Headlock Comics, they write, they make wrestling-based comic books. I lost a friend in the WTC attacks, and I'm not the least bit offended by anything Aubrey Sitterson said. Mags Visaggio said, I think it's genuinely fucked up that Aubrey Sitterson is being hounded out of comics for speaking his mind in a non-hateful way. So
I found the statement.
Oh, go for it.
So this comes from another article from Bleeding Cool, this time from Rich Johnston, So I'm just going to read what he says. So he says, 2 days ago, G.I. Joe comics writer Aubrey Sitterson tweeted a number of statements regarding people's reactions to the anniversary of 9/11 16 years on. Here's a little bit more context. So much so that G.I. Joe fan groups started to threaten to boycott coverage or purchase of not only G.I. Joe comics, but all of IDW's line unless he was fired. At the time, IDW's responses to concerns from their letters at IDW email address were supportive of Sitterson, while acknowledging the complainant's feelings. So they wrote, quote, Aubrey was living in New York on September 11th, 2001, and like many New Yorkers who saw their city attacked and who breathed in the dust of the wreckage and the dying, he at times finds it hard to take when people who didn't have that direct connection, that direct suffering, make statements that imply their suffering was as bad. Yes, the entire country was attacked, but we do see how people who were so directly impacted as New Yorkers can take exception to people who want to likewise connect to the event in the same way. The connection for everyone is there. Like I say, everyone was attacked on that day, but it obviously hit New York and New Yorkers more directly. That's his whole point, not to slight anyone. It is a thing you see on social media when any notably sad event happens or hits an anniversary. People who can't just mourn a celebrity, but who have to make it seem like they were personally connected, and so their suffering matters more. I believe that was Aubrey's point. I'm not saying I agree with his approach, but I also didn't live in New York, and I can't put myself in his shoes in that regard. The attack remains a raw, open wound for everyone, and everyone deals with it as best they can on an ongoing basis. Aubrey, as a New Yorker and as someone who feels everything very deeply, clearly struggles with the events of that day and other people's approach to it, as do most of all of us. Sorry you found what he said offensive, but we've talked to him in person about that day and know he didn't mean it to sound the way some have taken it.
Where was that? Where's that coming from?
That's from Bleeding Cool, and that was IDW's original statement. And then it looks like the statement that you made came afterwards.
Got it.
So then it says, in the last couple of hours, Steven Scott, PR manager of IDW, has sent out this official statement, which differs in tone considerably, and was set by a committee meeting.
Right.
So that's the one that I've been told to consider this as an official message and disregard that previous message. Okay, so I actually had the timeline backwards. So it says the thing about IDW in no way is condoning it, and discussions are underway about what's next. That's the official statement that came afterwards.
So this guy, Aubrey Sitterson, could lose his job over this.
Yep.
And what's unfortunate about it is that no one cared about the original tweets. This whole thing exploded because of fans of the G.I. Joe comics who don't want him to write that book anymore, who have taken this as an opportunity to attack him and use these tweets as a means to draw eyes to this whole thing. And unfortunately, IDW...
Give them a legitimate excuse to oust him.
Exactly. Unfortunately, IDW may capitulate to these people who just don't want him to write this comic anymore because he writes it in a way that doesn't appeal to their sensibilities. So, do you guys have any thoughts you want to add to this mix?
I mean, this is such a sticky issue, man. You know? Like, I think what I said at the top is basically my overall feelings on it. You know? Is like, I don't think Aubrey handled this very well, but I totally get where he's coming from. And it seems like it's kind of, like you said, a bit of a witch hunt. Like, these people have had an axe to grind with him for a long time. Now they see a place where they can, make a statement about him and say that they have a problem with him and his writing and not, and in their minds not come off as being bigoted or whatever the issue is, and not just say we don't like his writing because XYZ, but can actually point to this, quote unquote major issue. And I think it's unfortunate that IDW doesn't have his back, or seems like they might not, right? I think that original statement is the appropriate one. I think that's a very middle, even-tempered kind of thing, and I think it's totally the right move to stand by, your creator and his opinion about, which I think is valid, Like, again, whether he expressed it well or not, or maybe, there was a nicer way to say it, I don't know that that's relevant.
I agree. And I also don't know that this is... I don't know that that's in their... I mean, they can do whatever they want, but it seems like a strange thing to fire a writer over. And again, that's why this feels like so much more than what it seems. And I think that the Mary Sue article, they wrote a great article about this, in conjunction with the Bleeding Cool articles and what they've done, paints a very clear picture of what's going on here. This is a character assassination because a guy dared to put characters that represent more than just straight white men in the book. And that's really sad.
I mean, this whole thing just makes G.I. Joe fans look bad, I think.
And by the way, it's the fans, the G.I. Joe fans who have been vocal about this. I'm sure there's plenty of G.I. Joe fans who don't give a shit.
Sure,
or who like the book.
Who love it.
You're absolutely right. It just makes G.I. Joe fans look bad.
Yeah.
It does. Yeah.
It does.
It does. It makes the whole community look bad.
It makes comic book fans look bad. And this is again and again and again. And we just talked about the Action Comics issue and the Superman issue. And now we're talking about G.I. Joe. And again, we have comic book fans who make the whole industry worth of fans look bad because they can't accept that these books are moving beyond them and maybe never were for them. If you think that Superman sides with you on the issue of illegal immigration and you want to see him stand by and watch someone get shot, you're wrong.
You're a fucking dumbass.
And you should drop the book. You shouldn't read Superman if you feel that way. If you think that G.I. Joe should be a book about only white guys murdering ambiguous Muslims or people of color all across the world, if you think that's what the book should be, if you think that it shouldn't include women, if you think that it shouldn't include black people, if you think that it shouldn't include lesbians and gays and bisexual people and all that other stuff, then you're wrong. You're wrong, and you should drop the book.
Yeah, and I honestly, like, I hate to be the kind of person who says just, like, you know, oh, like, if you don't agree with where the industry or the medium's going, then, like, maybe it's time for you to find somewhere else to go. But in this scenario, I really think that's the only equation. That's the only answer to this, right? And, like, I honestly feel that way about all the arts in general. Like, if you have a problem with gay people or people of color and you're gonna bitch about, like, the fact that that's affecting the arts, it's like, you obviously don't know much about the history of the arts, my friend.
Yeah.
You know, it's like art is not just for fucking white men, okay? And it's certainly not just made by them. And, like, frankly, if you're at the point where you really think that, like, comics are not for you anymore because they're getting too political or too SJW or too whatever, like, good. You know what? Fuck off.
Yeah.
Don't need you.
Yeah, we don't need you. We don't fucking need you.
No,
and I think
like in general, if you're just a white supremacist piece of shit, just fuck off in a hole somewhere.
Or a sexist, or whatever, like, seriously.
Any kind of
if
bigot.
you're a fucking bigot, like, any kind of bigot, you know, it's like, seriously. I don't see how, especially people who, like, operate with that under the guise of patriotism. That's the least American shit I've ever heard, okay? Like, man, like, aren't conservatives supposed to believe in personal liberty, right? Like, everyone should be able to do their own fucking thing, be their own person, just exist, and we all can, you know, contribute to the country in our own way? Great, right?
Wait, that sounds like snowflake shit. I'm confused.
I just have no fucking energy or, like, I don't care. I don't care about these fucking people's feelings anymore. You know, it's like, grow the fuck up and, like, get with the program, or just get out of the fucking way.
Yeah, it's like that Bob Dylan song. If you can't lend a hand, then get out of the way. And the times are changing. Please lend a hand if you can't get out of the way.
Yeah, man. That's all there is to it in my mind.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think it's time for comic book fans to draw a hard line. I think it's time for fans of... I mean, on the Video Game Pals last week, we talked about the PewDiePie situation and his fan base and the ugly sort of underbelly of the gaming community that's filled with bigots. And I think it's time for fan bases of all kinds to take a hard line and say, look, no, we're not cool with this. We don't want this. This doesn't represent who we are. You're making us look bad, and we don't want you here.
Video game fan bases... I'm not a gamer, but, like they have a really bad rap, especially going back to Gamergate a few years ago.
Oh, yeah.
Like people who don't play video games, there's definitely a stigma because of this shit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we talk about that all the time on the show. I want to clarify real quick. I wasn't laughing at that issue. I was laughing at Sean's pronunciation of PewDiePie.
Is that wrong?
It's PewDiePie.
It's PewDiePie. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, I honestly think it's a real problem. You know, I think that, like, not to, like, throw around too many buzzwords, but, I mean, we're in that part of the show. So, I mean, like, I really do think that, like, toxic masculinity and, like, pro-white sentiment are far too prevalent in, like, geek and gamer and nerd communities, you know? Yeah, it's, again, not to throw around too many buzzwords, but, it's extremely problematic in my mind. You know, like, and I'd like to reiterate the point that Sean made earlier already. I don't think it's a significant number of the people that engage with these hobbies, especially not video games, because there are so many people that play video games nowadays. And I really think that there's a far greater number in most of these communities of a silent majority and a very vocal minority who are toxic. And I don't know what we can do other than to shine a light on these people and demonize them where appropriate, you know, and say this kind of behavior is not acceptable and we don't condone this shit. This does not represent us. This does not represent this community of fans, and we're not going to tolerate it, you know, in whatever way we can. And, like, we have our small platform here and we're going to shine a fucking light on it, you know? And if you're one of those people and you think that we're, you know, jumping up on a soapbox and being SJWs or whatever, like, bye. You know, we don't need your listens.
It's like the Charlottesville thing, but on a smaller scale in terms of direct impact. But it's just all these people who tout any kind of bigoted agenda that seeks to marginalize any group of people.
Anyone.
Yeah, just fuck off in a hole somewhere. I can't emphasize that enough.
Agreed. And I think that's a good place to end it. You know, we love comics and we want comics to thrive, and they're not going to with this kind of stuff going on. It's just not going to happen.
For the community to grow, comics need to be a place that speaks to everyone. That isn't a place where you feel like you're going to be bullied out of or you're going to be picked on when you're just trying to enjoy art.
Yep, absolutely. And so, with that, we're going to jump into some plugs. Pete.
God, I'm all fucking fired up.
It's like, oh shit, we gotta do plugs now?
We gotta record these earlier in the show before we talk about the heavy shit. Alright guys, thank you again so much for joining us here in another episode of the Comics Pals. We really do appreciate it. If you're a gamer, like we said, you can check out our other show, the Video Game Pals, where we have a lot of pretty similar discussions, but just about video games. So you can come check out me and Sean on that tomorrow on your platform of choice, where anywhere the Comics Pals is sold. We're on YouTube, all that stuff. If you want to get at me, you can hit me up on social media at @loud_Pete and talk to me about this or any other issues you'd like to bring up.
Phil?
Well, eventually when the Video Game Pals do a Pokemon episode, they'll invite me onto it because they want to hear my opinion on Pokemon.
When Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon drops.
Yeah. Then, as always, you can follow me on social media, where I post a lot of hardcore leftist shit. You can see me bash Nazis on a pretty regular basis.
And pictures of cats.
That's my Instagram. My Twitter.
Hashtag my aesthetic.
Yeah. But that's pretty much it. Cyborg Bebop. And Kale?
Shut up for a minute, Phil. If you wanna check out my stuff, you can find me on social media at Toto in Toe. That's TOTOINTOINGO.
and then real quick, Old Man Stan, since we still have you, do you have anything you want to plug?
Yeah, I'd like to plug Marco's social media platforms. You can find him at WoeIsMarco and WoeIsMarco_.
Sean, bring us home.
Alright, so today I'd like to plug the Comics Pals. You can find us all over social media. We're at the Comics Pals. You can also hit us up on iTunes and all other podcast hosting platforms. You can write to us at thecomicspals@gmail.com. When you write to us, you should let us know why the leader pal is your favorite pal,
And why Old Man Stan is your favorite impression on this show.
Yes. And also talk to us about how you feel about the issues that we discussed on this episode or any other episode.
Shit. In my plug section, I forgot to plug our brand new show, Pals Play, coming out today. Go check it out.
There you go. And of course, on YouTube, if you're watching this on YouTube, be sure to leave us a like, subscribe to the channel, drop us a line by commenting, and share the video with your friends. And as for me, you can find me on social media, only Twitter, at Sean Soapbox. And you can talk to me about a variety of things. I'll talk to you about anything except pirates. So
tweet at Sean Soapbox about pirates!
Don't do it.
Yo ho ho and a bottle of Sean!
Oh my god. And with that, we are the Comics Pals signing right the hell off. Take care, guys.
See you next
See you, folks.